In this video, we're going to introduce Substance 3D Painter, which is part of the Substance 3D collection. And I already downloaded, installed it, and right now I am in Creative Cloud, so I can open it from here directly or just double click on the icon that you will find in your operative system, Windows or Mac. And so I'm opening here Adobe Substance 3D Painter. We're going to start with this first lesson by introducing the software. We're going to see the interface and the basic things we can do. And right now it's in Italian. So what I'm gonna do is just close this. This is a welcome screen. You can open it anytime, or you can just click here not to visualize it anymore. And I'm gonna change the language right away. So I'm gonna go here to modify or edit, go to settings and just change the language from Italian here to the English and say okay. And I just need to restart Substance. So I'm just gonna restart it. And there you go, we're gonna restart, and now we will be in English, which is gonna be the language of this course, and it's gonna be a series of lessons dedicated on to Substance 3D, and we're gonna increase the level of difficulty little by little, so you can use this course even if you didn't open any software before. So we're gonna keep it simple and increase the level video by video, video after video. Now, the first thing you could do here actually on the home screen, which I think could be really helpful to start to understand what Substance 3D Painter is about, is to use the Start Painting button right here. Now, for the others, this is online documentation, tutorials, website forums, and assets, but this one here is probably the best when you want to start from zero, when you want to start from scratch. It's going to open up a template file with MeetMat, which is a character that you can use to start painting and start experimenting, get familiar with the software. Now you can use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Here in the right part, you have a 2D view, which is basically a texture or actually a texture layer that you can paint on. And here on the left side, you can also use the scroll wheel to go back and forth. You can see this is a 3D space. So this is explaining perfectly what you can do in 3D painting like this or other software where you have 3D painting functions. You can basically paint directly on the 3D object or on the 2D space. So if I click here, you can see I can create a cross, and it's going to create it both in 2D and in 3D. So if I want to type some words here, you can see that it's going to be again visible in both worlds. So these are connected because this is the object 3D, this is the material with the texture that we can apply to the 3D object. And we're going to explain these concepts better later. This is just an introduction. And I want to show you right away how you can navigate the scene. So you can use the scroll wheel to go back and forward or do the zoom in, zoom out. If you hold the Alt key of your keyboard, you can see down here you have some hints on how you can navigate. So Alt plus left is going to orbit or rotate the view around your subject. You can go back and you can go in the front. And if you hold the Alt key and the middle mouse, which is the scroll wheel, you can pan. And then the right mouse will be again to dolly the camera back and forth, so it's kind of a zoom effect. And you can also use this in the 2D view right here. So you can press the Alt, and if you click with the left mouse, it's going to rotate. If you click with the middle mouse, it's going to pan. And if you click with the right mouse, it's going to zoom in and out. So you can use them again in 3D or 2D. Now, if you hold also the Shift key together with the Alt key, you can also rotate, being more precise, and also do other things. But again, you can find those shortcut keys explained also in the little panel that is going to open up when you hold the Shift key. You can see all the features related to the Shift key. And if you hold the Alt key, you can see all the features related to the Alt key, and Control key, all the features related to the Control key. Now let's go back to the File menu here, and let's start exploring a little bit these menus. So first menu is to create a new document. So Control N, this is the shortcut key, and open a new existing file, Control plus O, and then recent files that we already used. And you can also open a sample, just as we did with this MeetMat. You can close also a document. You can save it with the name, And the first time you need to save as. The other times you can hit the Control S and just quickly save and override the scene. So let's click on Save As, and let's save this as lesson 01. You can see the format is SPP. So I can save this, and if I want, I can open up the same file, which is again gonna be the SPP file. You can see that if I don't open anything, it's gonna go back to this blank space. So if I wanna retrieve that sample file, I can also go to File, Open Sample, and you have like 5 different samples you can use. But I'm gonna go for Meatmat right now, which is the kind of a mascot and main character of the software. And I'm gonna orbit again, holding Alt key, left mouse, just a little bit. And also, you can now save as, and you have more saving options like saving and reducing the file size, saving as a copy. So when you don't want to override, for example, lesson 01, I don't want to override, I can save a copy, or I can save this also as a template. You can also remove the unused resources. You can import new resources from other software like 3ds Max or Blender or Maya or Cinema 4D. You'll find all the video courses about this software in the channel. And you can also export. You can export the mesh, which means the 3D object, or you can export the textures to create the material in another application, another software. So you can recreate that in another software. Or you can send it to Photoshop, After Effects, Substance 3D Stager. Now, if you're sending to Photoshop, you probably want to work better with the texture because Photoshop has a lot of tools to work with raster graphics, which are pixels. So you can do like many, you can do packaging and many color correction and filters effects. If you send it to After Effects, it's probably to create a video or an animation. And if you send it to Substance 3D Stager, it's probably to create a rendering using lights. And so it's kind of an advanced. This was previously was called Dimensions. So it was part of the Adobe world, but it was called another with another name. But of course, you can create everything if you want. Now in the edit, let's start to paint something here. So actually what I want to do is use this asset panel right here where we can find a lot of assets, and right now we can see some materials, and I want to apply a material here. So let me apply this orange paint spray. So I'm going to click and drag, and with the left mouse, you can see that when I apply it, the mesh here is going to be visible. So this is a structure, the wireframe of the object is going to be visible. So you can see if it's like a really complex object or not. And you can see it's also separated into 3 different parts. So I'm going to click and drag also here on this other part of the object and also on the head. Now you can see that if I, well, let me just go back, Control Z. And if I use the paint, so I'm gonna paint on this JB and apply the material, that's gonna go like override those letters, override that layer. And this is why we use layers. And layers are really handy, and this is one of the best feature that we have in Substance 3D Painter, because with this you can work just like in Photoshop. So if you know how to use Photoshop, you're gonna be better and you're gonna be more advanced. Otherwise, you can check the Photoshop video course in the channel. Now I'm gonna click and drag this layer on top to this other, so we can see why we can use the layers. And I can also delete a layer here, or like create a new layer or a new effect or a new mask and so on. So I want to just add a new layer, and I want to paint with this, and down here you have the properties. So this is another important panel for the tool that you're using. Right now you can see we're using the paint tool, so the brush, and we can change many parameters here like the size or the color. So if I go all the way down here, you can change the color. Let's make it like black or dark gray. And again, I'm gonna paint. So you can see you can paint on the 2D space. You can paint directly on the 3D space. And you can do this also in Photoshop, by the way, but Substance is gonna be better and more advanced. So definitely, if you want to work with materials, if you want to work with 3D painting, Substance 3D Painter is probably the best software out there that you can use. There's no doubt in that. And but again, you can do it also in other software if you want. It's not the only one that you can use. Now, I'm pretty satisfied with this, and let's move on. Let's move forward here. So if I want to go back, I can do Control Z. This is also pretty common, pretty popular. Control Epsilon to go forward. And there are also like some other things right here. You can re-import the 3D object. You can go in the settings. This is where we modify the language, but you can also like modify a little bit the background if you don't like it like this. So you can choose a color for like the top of the gradient here and another color for the bottom of the gradient. And you can also choose other settings here. I'm gonna go back in here probably in another lesson. Here we have shortcut keys. Here we have libraries, links. So let's say, okay, let's move on. And mode, this is where you can change the mode. So you can go from making the maps into painting mode. Right now we are in painting mode, and you can also render. If you click on render, and you also find an icon right here on the top right, you will render with the E-ray, which is you can see here progressive rendering. So it's gonna, the more you leave it, the more it's gonna create a better quality for the rendering. And here we have render settings. When we wanna switch type of interface, we can also click here. So we are back now into painting mode, and then we have a lot of other buttons here to change like the cameras settings and the perspective. We can switch 3D, 2D, and we can adjust the brush size, the flow, and all the other settings and options that we're gonna see later. And let's see again here. Then we have windows. So you can change here views. So for example, now we're using properties, we're using the texture set list, we are using the layers. So you can open and close the windows or panels from here, and you can check if you have the toolbars on. You can see the various UI options, like again painting, rendering, baking. You can load a UI, you can hide, you can also reset the UI. And here you have the possibility to display materials, the channels, and well, basically changing display. And then you have JavaScript and Python, which is like more advanced for programming. And then you have the help, where you find, helping resources. Now here we have a toolbar, and you can see that some of these look exactly like the tools that you have in Photoshop, if you know Photoshop. So you will be, again, more advanced because you are familiar with Photoshop. If you are not, you can check the Photoshop video course. Now, if I click and drag this with the left mouse, you can see I can dock this toolbar wherever I want, on the top, on the bottom, or again, I can bring it back in there. And you can also click and undock the assets library. So I can also like change, resize this window, and I can place it on another screen if I have more screens to free some space here in the main working area, which is this one here with the 2D and the 3D. And this is again when you get materials or other stuff. And again, you can dock it the same position. If you forget, you can always reset the UI anytime. And then you have again 3D view, 2D view, and here you can work with the layers in 3D and in 2D. And then you have the properties down here that you can manage. And again, we're gonna go down, we're gonna come back here and make things, more in depth later. We're gonna go and explain things into details. And then here you have display settings, shader settings, history to get again back and forward in history. So you can see all the actions that you have done, and you can choose if you want to go back and forward. And here you have logs, and that's it. So this is, the most important parts of the interface. Down here you also have the cache disk usage and the version. Now I'm going to close everything up, and actually I want to save this. And again, if you didn't save, it's going to ask you to create a new file. So I'm just going to save and override the lesson 01. And before we leave, I want to finish with a couple of tips. Now, the first tip is to make sure that your drivers are updated. And by drivers, I mean your graphic card drivers, because probably if nothing is working or something is not looking right, is because you don't have like the updated graphic cards. So if you have NVIDIA, go for and download, type your input your the name of your graphic card and all the details, and you're gonna find the latest drivers, download them, install them, and probably you're gonna solve the main issues doing this. So that's the first tip I want to give you. And well, we saw that basically this uh, software from the Substance 3D collection called Painter, it's mainly to paint and create materials and textures on existing 3D objects. That's what Adobe Substance 3D does mainly. But you have also other alternatives and options. You can use ZBrush. You can use ZBrush for sculpting and also painting in 3D, and also creating advanced textures, definitely. And this is probably the biggest player in the market in terms of sculpting and painting. And you can check the video course in the channel. Also, you have Madbox. This is from Autodesk, and also it's used to create sculpting and painting. It's a little bit smaller, and it costs also less, and so it's cheaper than ZBrush, but also has like less features. But you can definitely sculpt and paint also with Madbox. And if you want the cheapest solution here, you have the open source free Blender application that contains 3D modeling, 3D rendering, but also sculpting and painting. And you can check the video course on 3D character design in the channel that will explain to you how you can work with Blender in sculpting and painting, pretty similar to ZBrush. And then also you have other solutions like, for example, Photoshop. Photoshop has a 3D um, space that you can use to work in 3D painting and 3D rendering. Well, it's just, kind of simplified. So it's not so exciting, but you can definitely do some 3D painting also in Photoshop if you want. And so this will be all for this video guide and first lesson of the course. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel to stay updated for more guides, more lessons, more courses. Check the other courses that we already have in the channel. And if you want to thank us, if you want to support us, you can do it by joining the channel as a supporter. And this will be all for this first lesson of the Substance course. So thanks again. See you in the next lesson.